The blood on his mother's face made Harrison Reed's world stop turning, and in that moment of frozen horror beneath the New Mexico sun, he knew the wedding scheduled for Saturday would never happen. Harrison had ridden hard from the northern pastures of the ranch, dust coating his hat and chaps after 3 days of moving cattle across the high desert terrain. It was June of 1882, and the heat shimmered off the hard, packed earth around Socorro like waves of liquid glass. He had been looking forward to surprising his mother, maybe even helping her with preparations for the Davenport wedding that had the whole town buzzing. Margaret Reed, his sweet-natured mother who ran the boarding house on the edge of town, had been excited about hosting some of the guests traveling in for the ceremony. Instead, Harrison found her collapsed against the kitchen wall, one eye swollen shut, her lips split and bleeding, bruises already darkening along her jaw and neck. "Mama." The word came out strangled, barely recognizable as his own voice. Harrison dropped to his knees beside her, his hands shaking as he reached for her shoulders. "Mama, who did this to you?" Margaret's good eye fluttered open, and shame flooded her battered features. She tried to turn away from him, but Harrison gently cupped her face, forcing himself to look at every mark, every injury, committing them to memory with a rage that burned hotter than the desert outside. "It does not matter," she whispered, her voice thick with pain and humiliation. "Just help me up, Harrison. I have work to do." "The hell it does not matter." Harrison's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "Tell me who put their hands on you. Tell me right now." His mother's remaining good eye filled with tears that spilled down her bruised cheek. "Please, son." "It will only make things worse. He is an important man. Nobody will believe me over him." Harrison's voice dropped to something dangerous and cold. "Give me his name, Mama." Margaret Reed closed her eyes, resignation settling over her like a shroud. "Richard Davenport." He came to discuss lodging arrangements for his business partners. When I told him the rooms were already committed to the Miller family, he became angry. He said I was disrespecting him, that I should know better than to refuse him anything. When I tried to explain, he just started hitting me. Richard Davenport. The name echoed through Harrison's skull like a death knell. Richard Davenport, the wealthy cattle broker from Albuquerque who was set to marry Annabelle Jenkins in 4 days. Annabelle, the banker's daughter with honey-colored hair and eyes the color of spring leaves, who smiled at everyone she passed on the street and volunteered at the church every Sunday. Annabelle, who Harrison had loved from a distance for the better part of 2 years, never daring to speak his feelings because what did a simple ranch hand have to offer a woman of her standing? Now that woman was about to bind herself for life to the monster who had beaten his mother black and blue over a boarding house room. "Stay here," Harrison said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "I am going to fetch Doc Patterson, and then I am going to make sure Richard Davenport never hurts another soul." "Harrison, no." Margaret grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "You cannot stop this wedding. The Jenkins family has already spent a fortune on preparations. Annabelle's father has business dealings with Richard that could make or break the bank. If you interfere, you will ruin that girl's life and her family's standing. Promise me you will leave this alone." But Harrison was already standing, already moving toward the door. "I promise you nothing except that Annabelle Jenkins will know exactly what kind of man she is about to marry. What she does with that information is her choice." He rode into Socorro proper with his heart hammering against his ribs, barely registering the familiar storefronts and dusty streets he had known his entire life. The Jenkins house sat on the north side of town, a 2-story structure with white paint and green shutters that spoke of prosperity and respectability. Harrison had never approached it before, had always admired it only from a distance, much like the woman who lived inside. He dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post with hands that had finally stopped shaking, replaced now by a cold determination that settled into his bones. Before he could knock, the door swung open, and there stood Annabelle Jenkins herself, dressed in a simple blue cotton dress that matched the endless New Mexico sky behind her. "Harrison Reed," she said, surprise and something else flickering across her delicate features. "I did not expect to see you here." Up close, she was even more beautiful than he remembered. Her honey-colored hair was pinned up loosely, with small tendrils escaping to frame her face. Her green eyes studied him with an intelligence and warmth that made his chest ache. She was 21 years old, only 2 years younger than himself, but there was a maturity in her gaze that suggested wisdom beyond her years. "Miss Jenkins," Harrison said, removing his hat and holding it against his chest. "I need to speak with you. It is urgent." Something in his tone must have alarmed her because her expression shifted from curious to concerned. "Has something happened? Is someone hurt?" "Yes," Harrison said bluntly. "My mother, and I need you to know it was your intended who hurt her." The color drained from Annabelle's face. She glanced back into the house, then stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. "Perhaps we should speak somewhere more private. My father is inside working on ledgers, and I would rather not have this conversation where he might overhear." She led him around the side of the house to a small garden where roses bloomed despite the harsh climate, their sweet scent thick in the afternoon air. When they were sufficiently hidden from the windows, Annabelle turned to face him fully, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Tell me everything," she said quietly. So Harrison did. He described finding his mother on the floor, the bruises, the split lip, the story she had told about Richard's rage over something as insignificant as a boarding house room. As he spoke, he watched Annabelle's face, saw the way her eyes widened, the way her hands began to tremble, the way she wrapped her arms around herself as though trying to hold something broken inside. "I see," she whispered when he finished. "Thank you for telling me this. You believe me?" Harrison asked, surprised by how much her faith mattered. "Of course I believe you." Annabelle's voice was steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "Why would you lie about such a thing? And honestly, it explains so much." "What do you mean?" She looked away, focusing on a particularly vibrant red rose as though it might provide her with answers. "Richard has a temper. I have seen glimpses of it, though never directed at me. The way he speaks to servers at restaurants, the way he treats his horse, the cruelty in his voice when he discusses business rivals. I convinced myself these were isolated incidents, that I was being too judgmental. My father was so pleased with the match, kept telling me what a fortunate woman I was to catch the attention of such a successful man. And Richard can be charming when he wishes to be. He brought me flowers, said pretty things, made promises about the life we would build together." "But you do not love him," Harrison said. It was not a question. Annabelle's laugh was bitter and broken. "No, I do not love him. I barely even like him. But I am 21 years old, Harrison. I have turned down 3 other proposals in the past 2 years. My father made it clear that this was my last chance, that if I refused Richard, I would be condemning myself to spinsterhood and bringing shame upon my family. So I said yes, even though every instinct I possessed screamed at me to run." Harrison stepped closer, drawn by the raw pain in her voice. "Then do not marry him. Call off the wedding. You make it sound so simple." Annabelle finally met his gaze, and the despair he saw there nearly broke him. "My father has invested thousands of dollars in this wedding. He has business contracts tied to my marriage to Richard. If I back out now, it will destroy him financially and socially. Everyone we know has been invited. The dress is finished, the food is ordered, the minister is prepared. How can I possibly stop this now? How can you possibly not stop it? Harrison countered, his voice rising with passion. Annabelle, this man beat my mother unconscious over a room reservation. What do you think he will do to you when you are his wife, when he owns you legally and nobody can interfere? The first time you disagree with him, the first time you fail to obey quickly enough, he will hurt you. And it will not stop. Men like Richard Davenport do not change. I know. The words came out as a sob. God help me, I know you are right. But Harrison, you do not understand. My father's bank is barely staying afloat. He made some poor investments last year, and Richard has promised to bring in major accounts that will save everything. If I break this engagement, my father will lose those accounts. The bank could fail. My parents could lose their home, their reputation, everything they have worked for. How can I be so selfish? Harrison reached out and took her hands in his, feeling the trembling in her fingers, the coldness of her skin despite the heat. It is not selfish to protect yourself, and your father should never have put you in this position. What kind of man sells his daughter to save his business? Annabelle flinched at the harsh truth of his words but did not pull away. You are right. I have tried to pretend otherwise, but you are completely right. I am being sacrificed, and I have been too afraid to admit it. Then do not be afraid anymore. Harrison's grip tightened on her hands. I will stand with you. I will testify to what Richard did to my mother. We can go to the sheriff together, file formal charges. Once the truth is out, nobody will expect you to marry him. The sheriff is Richard's cousin, Annabelle said wearily. He will never file charges against his own family. You must know that. Harrison cursed under his breath because she was absolutely right. Sheriff Tom Davenport had made his family loyalty abundantly clear on numerous occasions. Then we go to the territorial marshal. We make enough noise that it cannot be ignored. That could take weeks, maybe months. The wedding is in 4 days, Harrison. We do not have time for any of that. Annabelle pulled her hands free and pressed them against her face, her breathing ragged. I do not know what to do. I feel like I am drowning and there is no way out. There is always a way out. Harrison's mind raced, sorting through options and discarding them just as quickly. Then an idea struck him, reckless and wild, but possibly their only chance. What if you disappeared? Annabelle lowered her hands, staring at him. What? What if you just left Sakaro, got on a train or a horse and vanished before the wedding? You could go stay with relatives in another territory or head to California or anywhere Richard could not find you. Without a bride, there can be no wedding. Run away. Annabelle said the words slowly as though testing their weight. Just abandon everything and everyone I know. To save your life, Harrison pressed. Because that is what is at stake here, Annabelle, your life. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. Richard will kill you, whether quickly in a rage or slowly through years of beatings. You know I am telling you the truth. She did know. He could see the acknowledgement in her eyes, the terrible acceptance of what her future held if she went through with this marriage. She turned away from him and walked deeper into the garden, her movements jerky and uncertain. Harrison waited, giving her space to think, to process, to decide her own fate. If I run, Annabelle said finally, still facing away from him, my father will be ruined. Richard will make sure of it. He will call in debts, spread rumors, destroy everything my family has built. My parents will hate me for it. Better they hate you alive than mourn you dead, Harrison said quietly. Annabelle laughed, the sound sharp with hysteria. God, how did my life become this nightmare? 6 months ago I was happy. I helped at the church, visited with friends, read books in this garden. Life was peaceful, simple. And now I am contemplating running away like a thief in the night to escape a man everyone else thinks is wonderful. "He has them all fooled," Harrison said. "But you see the truth. I see the truth. My mother, lying on that floor with blood on her face, she knows the truth. Do not let everyone else's blindness cost you everything." A long silence stretched between them, filled only with the buzzing of bees moving among the roses and the distant sounds of Sakura going about its business. Harrison watched Annabelle's shoulders rise and fall with her breathing, saw the moment when her posture straightened, when decision hardened into resolve. "I will do it," she said, turning to face him. Her eyes were red but dry, her jaw set with determination. "I will leave Sakura. But I need help. I cannot do this alone." Harrison's heart leaped even as his mind catalogued all the complications, all the dangers. "What do you need?" "A horse, supplies, money if you have any to spare. I have some savings hidden in my room, but it is not much, and I need time. I have to leave tonight, after my parents are asleep. If I wait until morning, someone will see me, will try to stop me." "Where will you go?" Annabelle bit her lip, thinking. "My mother's sister lives in Santa Fe. She married against my grandfather's wishes years ago, and the family barely speaks to her. But she always told me if I ever needed help, her door was open. I will go there, at least initially. After that, I do not know." "Santa Fe is 3 days' hard ride north," Harrison said, his mind already planning the route. "You will need to avoid the main roads, stay off the beaten path. Richard will come looking for you as soon as he realizes you are gone." "I know." Annabelle's voice was small but steady. "I am terrified, Harrison, but I am more terrified of marrying him." Harrison crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He wanted to pull her into his arms, to promise her everything would be all right, to confess the feelings he had carried for her these past 2 years. But this was not the time. She was frightened and overwhelmed, and he would not take advantage of her vulnerability. "I will help you," he said simply. "I will get you a horse and supplies. I will make sure you have enough money for the journey. And I will cover your escape, buy you as much time as I can before anyone realizes you are gone." "Why?" Annabelle asked, searching his face. "Why would you do all this for me? We barely know each other." "Because I love you," Harrison thought. "Because I have loved you since the day I saw you reading poetry in the town square." Your face lit up with joy at the words. "Because you are kind and intelligent and deserve so much better than the fate that has been assigned to you." But what he said was, "Because it is the right thing to do. Because no woman should be forced to marry a man who beats defenseless people. Because you deserve to choose your own path." Something flickered in Annabelle's eyes, something warm and wondering that made Harrison's breath catch. But she just nodded and said, "Thank you. I will never forget this kindness." They made their plans quickly, speaking in low, urgent voices. Annabelle would pack only what she could carry in a small bag, focusing on practical clothing and personal items that could not be replaced. Harrison would bring the horse to a grove of cottonwood trees half a mile north of town at midnight. He would also bring food, water, a bedroll, and all the money he could scrape together. From there, Annabelle would ride north, following back trails and avoiding settlements until she reached Santa Fe. "What will you tell people?" Annabelle asked as they prepared to part. "When they come looking for me, which they will, what will you say?" "The truth," Harrison said firmly. "I will tell them Richard Davenport is a violent man who beat my mother, and that I warned you about it. I will tell them you made your own choice based on that information. I will not lie to protect his reputation. They will blame you for ruining the wedding. Let them. I can handle whatever comes." Annabelle reached out and touched his cheek, a gesture so unexpected and intimate that Harrison felt it like lightning through his entire body. "You are a good man, Harrison Reed. I am sorry it took me so long to see it." Then she was gone, slipping back into her house before he could respond. leaving him standing alone in the garden with the scent of roses and the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on his shoulders. Harrison spent the rest of the afternoon in a blur of activity. He checked on his mother, relieved to find that Doc Patterson had already been summoned by a neighbor who heard the commotion. The doctor confirmed nothing was broken, though Margaret would be in considerable pain for weeks as the bruises healed. Harrison helped her to bed, ignoring her protests that she had work to do, and promised to check on her in the morning. Then he went to see his boss, Jack Miller, who owned the ranch where Harrison worked. Jack was a fair man in his 50s with weather-beaten features and a no-nonsense attitude. He listened in silence as Harrison explained about his mother, about Richard Davenport, and about his intention to help Annabelle Jenkins escape her wedding. "You are asking for trouble," Jack said when Harrison finished. "The Davenports have a lot of power in this territory. If you cross them, they will come after you hard." "I know," Harrison said, "but I cannot let her marry that monster. I cannot." Jack studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "You are in love with her." It was not a question, but Harrison answered anyway. "Yes, I am. Have been for years, though I never had the courage to tell her." "And does she feel the same?" "I do not know," Harrison admitted. "But that is not why I am doing this. Even if she hates me forever, even if she marries someone else the day after she reaches Santa Fe, I will still help her escape. Because it is right." Jack stood and walked to a locked chest in the corner of his office. He pulled out a key, opened the chest, and removed a leather pouch that clinked with the sound of coins. "There is $200 here. It is supposed to be for winter supplies, but I can delay those purchases. Consider it a loan." Harrison stared at the pouch, overwhelmed by the generosity. "Jack, I cannot. That is too much." "You can and you will." Jack pressed the pouch into Harrison's hands. "That girl is going to need money to start over somewhere new. $200 is not enough, but it is better than nothing. And Harrison, after you get her safely away, I want you to go with her." "What? You heard me. Go with her to Santa Fe or wherever she ends up. Make sure she arrives safely. I can spare you for a few weeks. Hell, I can spare you permanently if it comes to that. You are a good worker, but you are also young and talented. You could find ranch work anywhere in the territory." "I cannot ask you to do this," Harrison protested, but his heart was already reaching for the possibility, the chance to spend more time with Annabelle, to ensure her safety beyond just the initial escape. "You are not asking. I am offering." Jack gripped Harrison's shoulder firmly. "I heard about what happened to your mother. If Margaret says Richard Davenport did that to her, then he did it. And I will be damned if I stand by and let another woman suffer at his hands. Now get out of here and do what needs to be done." Harrison left the ranch with supplies and money, his head spinning with the rapid turn of events. He stopped by the general store to purchase additional items Annabelle would need, then returned to his small cabin on the edge of the Reed property to prepare. His own mother lived in the boarding house, but Harrison had built himself a modest one-room home 2 years prior, craving independence and privacy. As darkness fell over Socorro, Harrison checked and rechecked his preparations. 2 horses instead of 1, because he had taken Jack's advice and decided to accompany Annabelle to Santa Fe. Enough food and water for a week-long journey. Bedrolls, extra clothing, ammunition for his rifle. A detailed map of the back trails leading north through the harsh New Mexico landscape. At 11:30, he mounted his own horse and led the second one, a steady mare named Bella, north toward the Cottonwood Grove. The night was clear, stars scattered across the black sky like diamonds, a waning moon providing just enough light to see by. Harrison's nerves thrummed with anticipation and fear. So many things could go wrong. Annabelle might be discovered trying to sneak out. Her parents might wake. Someone might see them meeting and raise an alarm. But when he reached the cottonwoods, Annabelle was already there, a small bag clutched in her hands, her eyes huge in the moonlight. She had changed into a practical split skirt and simple blouse, her hair braided down her back. She looked terrified and brave and achingly beautiful. "You came," she whispered as he dismounted. "Of course I came." Harrison took her bag and secured it to Bella's saddle. "Did anyone see you leave?" "No. My parents sleep on the second floor at the front of the house. I went out through the kitchen door. I left a note on my pillow, so they will not panic when they find me gone in the morning. I told them I could not go through with the wedding, that I needed time to think. I did not mention you." "They will figure it out soon enough," Harrison said, "but maybe it will buy us a few extra hours." "Are you ready for this?" Annabelle looked back toward Sakura, toward the life she was leaving behind. "No, but I am going anyway." Harrison helped her mount Bella, then swung up onto his own horse. "Wait. You are coming with me." "I am," Harrison said firmly. "You cannot make this journey alone, Annabelle. It is too dangerous. I am going to make sure you reach Santa Fe safely." "Harrison, you will lose your job, your home, everything." "Jack Miller gave me permission to go, and even if he had not, I would still be going. Now come on. We need to put as much distance between us and Sakura as possible before sunrise." They rode north through the darkness, avoiding roads and settlements, picking their way carefully through the rocky desert terrain. Neither spoke much, both focused on the demands of the journey and the magnitude of what they had done. Harrison kept glancing at Annabelle, watching for signs of exhaustion or regret, but she sat straight in her saddle, her gaze fixed ahead, determination written in every line of her body. As the sun began to lighten the eastern horizon, they stopped to rest the horses and eat a quick meal of jerky and hardtack. Annabelle's hands shook as she ate, and Harrison could see the toll the night had taken on her. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. "I keep expecting to wake up and find this is all a dream," Annabelle admitted. "Or a nightmare, I am not sure which. I just left my entire life behind, Harrison, everything I have ever known. What if I made a terrible mistake?" "You did not make a mistake," Harrison said with conviction. "You saved yourself. That took more courage than most people possess. It does not feel courageous. It feels selfish and cowardly." Harrison set down his food and turned to face her fully. "Listen to me, Annabelle Jenkins. You are one of the bravest people I have ever met. You recognized danger and removed yourself from it, even though doing so cost you everything. That is not cowardly. That is survival. That is strength." Tears spilled down Annabelle's cheeks, the first time she had allowed herself to cry since making her decision. "My parents are going to hate me. My father is going to lose everything because of my selfishness." "Your father was willing to sacrifice you to save himself," Harrison said bluntly. "That is not your fault. None of this is your fault. Richard Davenport is the villain here, not you." Annabelle wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "How did you become so wise, Harrison Reed?" "I am not wise. I am just a ranch hand who cannot stand by and watch injustice happen." He paused, then added quietly, "And I care about you, very much." Annabelle's breath caught and she looked at him with startled awareness. "Harrison, I cannot, not right now. I am too confused, too overwhelmed. I just need to focus on getting to Santa Fe." "I know," Harrison said quickly. "I am not asking for anything from you, Annabelle. I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens from here, wherever you end up, I will always care about you. That is not going to change." Something softened in Annabelle's expression, something tender and uncertain. "Thank you for being honest with me, and for everything else you have done. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not owe me anything," Harrison said. "Now finish eating. We need to keep moving." They traveled for 3 more days, pushing themselves and the horses to the limit. The New Mexico landscape was unforgiving, all harsh sun and scattered scrub vegetation, broken occasionally by dramatic rock formations and dry riverbeds. They saw few other travelers, just the occasional wagon train in the distance or a lone rider on the horizon. Each time Harrison's hand went to his rifle, prepared for pursuit, but nobody approached them. On the 3rd night, as they camped in a small canyon that provided shelter from the wind, Annabelle finally began to open up about her life, her fears, her dreams. She told Harrison about the pressure she had felt from her father, the way he had made her feel like a burden and a disappointment every time she refused a proposal. She talked about her love of reading, her fascination with poetry, her secret dream of becoming a teacher. Harrison listened, absorbing every word, filing away these precious details about the woman he loved. In turn, he shared his own story. He told her about growing up in Socorro, about losing his father to a mining accident when he was 12, about working odd jobs to help his mother keep the boarding house running. He spoke of his love for the land, for the hard work of ranching, for the simple satisfaction of a job well done. He confessed his shyness, his tendency to fade into the background rather than put himself forward. "I noticed you, though," Annabelle said softly. "You probably do not believe that, but I did. You were always polite, always respectful. You tipped your hat when you passed me on the street. You helped Mrs. Patterson carry her groceries to her wagon last summer when nobody else offered. You are kind, Harrison. That is rarer than you might think." Harrison's throat tightened with emotion. "I wish I had spoken to you sooner, before Richard Davenport came to town." "Would it have made a difference?" Annabelle asked. "My father had already decided I needed to marry well. A ranch hand, no matter how kind, would never have been acceptable to him." "Maybe not," Harrison admitted, "but at least you would have known you had another option. You would have known someone saw you as more than just a profitable match." Annabelle reached across the campfire and took his hand. "I know that now, and it matters, Harrison. It matters more than you realize." They reached the outskirts of Santa Fe on the 4th day, both exhausted and wind-burned, their supplies nearly depleted. The territorial capital was much larger than Socorro, with adobe buildings and narrow streets that wound up into the foothills. Annabelle directed Harrison to a modest house on the eastern edge of town, where her aunt supposedly lived. The woman who answered their knock was in her 40s, with graying brown hair and suspicious eyes that softened when she recognized Annabelle. "Sweet, merciful heaven, is that you, Annabelle?" "Child, what are you doing here, Aunt Catherine?" Annabelle said, her voice breaking with relief and exhaustion. "I am so sorry to arrive unannounced like this, but I had nowhere else to go." Catherine pulled Annabelle into a fierce embrace, then glanced at Harrison with curious but not unfriendly eyes. "And who is this young man?" "This is Harrison Reed. He saved me from making the worst mistake of my life, and then he made sure I arrived here safely. I owe him everything." Catherine studied Harrison for a long moment, then nodded with apparent satisfaction. "Any friend of Annabelle's is welcome here. Come inside, both of you. You look like you could use a hot meal and a soft bed." The next few hours passed in a blur. Catherine fed them, gave them rooms to sleep in, and listened with increasing horror as Annabelle explained about Richard Davenport, about the beating of Harrison's mother, about the escape and the journey to Santa Fe. When Annabelle finished, Catherine was pale but composed. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "I have met men like your Richard Davenport. They are charming until they have you trapped, and then they reveal their true nature. You are safe here, Annabelle. You can stay as long as you need." "I have some money," Annabelle said, retrieving her savings and the funds Harrison had given her. "I can pay you for room and board." "You will do no such thing," Catherine said sharply. "You are family. This is your home now for however long you want it." Harrison stood, suddenly aware that his role in this story was finished. He had gotten Annabelle to safety. She had family to care for her, shelter, a chance to start over. She did not need him anymore. "I should go," he said quietly. "I need to get back to Sakura, face whatever consequences are waiting for me." "No," Annabelle said, standing as well. "Harrison, you cannot go back there. Richard will destroy you. He will make sure you never work in New Mexico again. You know he will." Harrison shrugged, trying to appear unconcerned despite the fear coiling in his gut. "Maybe, but I cannot hide forever, and my mother is back there. I need to make sure she is all right." Annabelle crossed to him and took both his hands in hers. "Then let me come with you. Let me testify to the sheriff, to the marshal, to whoever will listen. Let me make sure everyone knows what kind of man Richard really is." "That is too dangerous," Harrison protested. "If you go back, your father might force you to go through with the wedding, and Richard will be furious. There is no telling what he might do." "I am not afraid anymore," Annabelle said, and Harrison could hear the truth in her voice. "You taught me that, Harrison. You showed me that standing up for what is right matters more than taking the easy path. We can do this together. We can make sure Richard Davenport faces consequences for what he did." Catherine cleared her throat. "Or you could both stay here. I have connections in Santa Fe, Harrison. I could help you find work. You could start over, both of you, where Richard's influence does not reach." Harrison looked at Annabelle, saw the hope and fear and determination warring in her expression. "What do you want?" he asked her. "Truly?" Annabelle took a shaky breath. "I want justice. For your mother, for me, for every other woman Richard has probably hurt over the years. But I also want to be smart about this. We cannot just ride back into Sakura and expect people to believe us over him." "Then what do you suggest?" Annabelle's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The territorial marshal. His office is here in Santa Fe. We could go to him directly, file formal charges, give our testimonies. If the marshal gets involved, the local sheriff will have to cooperate. Richard will not be able to hide behind family connections." Hope flickered in Harrison's chest. "Do you think the marshal would actually take the case?" "He will if we make enough noise," Catherine interjected. "I know the marshal's wife. We serve on the same church committee. I can arrange a meeting, make sure you get a fair hearing." Over the next 2 days, Catherine made good on her promise. She arranged for Harrison and Annabelle to meet with Territorial Marshal James Ward, a stern man in his 50s with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. They told him their story, with Annabelle providing details about Richard's temperament and Harrison describing exactly what he had found when he returned home to his mother. Catherine had also convinced Margaret Reed to make the journey to Santa Fe, despite her injuries, so she could testify directly. Marshal Ward listened to all of them, taking careful notes, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. When they finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "I will be honest with you," he said. "Cases like this are difficult to prosecute. Richard Davenport is a wealthy man with powerful friends. Your mother's testimony is compelling, but without witnesses, it becomes his word against hers, and juries tend to side with men of status." "So you are saying there is no point in pursuing this?" Harrison demanded, anger sharpening his voice. "I am saying it will be difficult, but not impossible." Ward pulled out a file from his desk drawer. "Richard Davenport has been on my radar for some time. There have been other complaints, other allegations. A saloon girl in Albuquerque who ended up with broken ribs. A business rival who had his horse shot out from under him after a dispute. Nothing we could prove but enough smoke to suggest fire. Your case might be the one that finally sticks. Relief and vindication flooded through Harrison. Then you will investigate. I will. But I need you all to be prepared for a fight. Davenport will hire the best lawyers money can buy. He will attack your credibility, your mother's reputation, everything. This will get ugly before it gets better. I do not care, Margaret said quietly. Her bruises had faded to yellow and green, but her eyes burned with determination. That man hurt me, and he will hurt others if he is not stopped. I will do whatever it takes. Marshal Ward nodded with approval. Good. Give me a week to gather evidence and build the case. In the meantime, I suggest you all stay in Santa Fe. I can provide protection if needed. The week that followed was one of the strangest of Harrison's life. He stayed at Catherine's house, helping with odd jobs around the property to earn his keep. He and Annabelle spent hours talking, walking through Santa Fe's streets, slowly getting to know each other without the pressure of immediate danger hanging over them. She showed him her favorite bookstore, where she could lose herself for hours among the shelves. He took her to watch the sunset from a hill overlooking the city, where the sky turned a dozen shades of gold and crimson. With each passing day, Harrison felt himself falling deeper in love with her. And more terrifyingly, he began to see signs that she might feel the same. The way she smiled when he entered a room. The way she sought out his company, his opinion, his presence. The way her hand would brush against his as they walked, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. On the 6th evening, as they sat in Catherine's garden watching the stars emerge, Annabelle finally addressed what had been building between them. Harrison, I need to tell you something. His heart hammered against his ribs. All right. When I was engaged to Richard, I convinced myself that love was not important, that security and stability mattered more than affection or compatibility. My father told me love was a luxury, something frivolous and unreliable. I believed him because it was easier than fighting. And now? Harrison asked carefully. Now I realize my father was wrong about everything. Annabelle turned to face him fully, her green eyes luminous in the starlight. These past few weeks with you have taught me what really matters. Kindness matters. Integrity matters. Being with someone who sees you as an equal, who respects your choices, who would rather sacrifice his own comfort than see you hurt. That matters. And Harrison, I feel all of those things with you. Annabelle, Harrison breathed, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. I am not asking for promises, she continued quickly. I know everything is still uncertain. The case against Richard, my family, where I will end up living, all of it. But I needed you to know that I care for you, very much. More than I probably should, given how recently I nearly married someone else. Harrison reached for her hands, holding them gently. You can take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere. What if the case falls apart? What if Richard goes free? Then we will figure out what comes next together. If you want that, I want that, Annabelle whispered. I want that more than anything. Harrison cupped her face in his hands, giving her every chance to pull away. When she did not, when she leaned into his touch with a soft sigh, he kissed her. It was gentle and sweet and full of all the feelings he had kept locked away for years. Annabelle's hands came up to grip his shoulders, and she kissed him back with a fervor that stole his breath. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Annabelle laughed with pure joy. That was worth waiting for. We can do it again, Harrison offered, grinning. I would like that very much. Marshal Ward summoned them to his office at the end of the week with news. He had compiled enough evidence to formally charge Richard Davenport with assault. More importantly, 2 other women had come forward after hearing about the investigation, both with their own stories of Richard's violence. With multiple accusers and Margaret's detailed testimony, the case was solid enough to proceed to trial. Davenport has been arrested, Ward told them. He posted bail, but he is not allowed to leave the territory. The trial is set for 3 weeks from now in Albuquerque. I will need all of you to testify. What about the wedding? Annabelle asked. Was it called off? Ward's expression darkened. Davenport sent a telegram to your father claiming you had been kidnapped by Harrison Reed. He tried to organize a search party to come after you. I had to intervene and explain that you left of your own free will, and that Davenport was facing criminal charges. Your father was not pleased. Annabelle's face crumpled, and Harrison instinctively put his arm around her shoulders. I knew he would be angry. I just hoped that once he knew the truth about Richard, he might understand. Give him time, Ward said, not unkindly. Sometimes people need space to accept difficult truths. The trial, when it finally took place, was every bit as brutal as Ward had warned. Richard Davenport's lawyers attacked Margaret's character, suggesting she had provoked the attack or was lying for attention. They implied Annabelle was a hysterical woman who had fabricated doubts about her fiancé because of cold feet. They painted Harrison as a jealous rival who had manipulated both women for his own purposes, but the prosecution had facts on their side. They had a doctor's testimony about the extent of Margaret's injuries. They had the testimonies of the 2 other women, whose stories painted a damning pattern of violence. They had Annabelle's calm, clear statement about the warning signs she had ignored and the fear she had felt. And they had Harrison's unwavering account of finding his mother brutalized and making the decision to warn Annabelle. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the foreman stood and announced the verdict: guilty on all charges of assault. Richard Davenport was sentenced to 5 years in the territorial prison. He stared at Annabelle as the sentence was pronounced, his face twisted with rage and hatred. Harrison stepped in front of her, blocking the view, silently promising that Richard would never get close to her again. Outside the courthouse, Annabelle's father was waiting. Harold Jenkins looked older than Harrison remembered, his face drawn and gray. He approached them hesitantly, his hat clutched in his hands. "Annabelle," he said hoarsely, "I owe you an apology, several apologies. I let my own fears and ambitions blind me to what kind of man Richard really was. I nearly sacrificed you to save myself, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." Annabelle's eyes filled with tears. "Papa, the bank is struggling," Harold continued. "You were right about that. But your mother made me realize that no amount of money is worth losing my daughter. We will figure out the finances somehow. What matters is that you are safe, that you are happy." "I am safe," Annabelle said softly, "and I am starting to be happy." Harold's gaze shifted to Harrison, and something complicated crossed his face. Resignation, perhaps, or acceptance. "Is this young man the reason?" "Part of it," Annabelle admitted. "Harrison saved me, Papa, not just from Richard, but from a life I did not want. He gave me the courage to choose my own path." Harold extended his hand to Harrison. "Then I owe you thanks as well. I am sorry for any trouble this caused you." Harrison shook the offered hand, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. "I would do it again in a heartbeat, sir." "I believe you would." Harold turned back to Annabelle. "Your mother wants to see you. Will you come back to Socorro at least for a visit?" "Yes," Annabelle said. "Soon, but I am going to stay in Santa Fe for now. Aunt Catherine has offered me a home and I have been helping her with her sewing business. I like it there." "I understand." Harold kissed his daughter's forehead. "Be happy, sweetheart. That is all I want for you now." As her father walked away, Annabelle leaned into Harrison's embrace. "That went better than I expected." "He loves you," Harrison said. "He made mistakes, but he loves you, sometimes that is enough. Over the following months, Harrison and Annabelle built a life together in Santa Fe. Harrison found work at a large ranch outside the city, and his skill with horses and cattle quickly earned him a reputation. Annabelle continued helping Catherine with the sewing business while also volunteering as a tutor for children whose families could not afford formal schooling. She finally got to pursue her dream of teaching, even if it looked different than she had originally imagined. They courted properly, with Harrison calling on her at Catherine's house and taking her to dinners and dances. He met her friends, and she met his colleagues from the ranch. Their relationship deepened from the intense bond forged in crisis into something steadier and sweeter, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. On a cool November evening, exactly 1 year after they had fled Socorro together, Harrison took Annabelle back to the hill overlooking Santa Fe where they had watched the sunset so many times before. As the sky blazed with color, he dropped to one knee and pulled out a simple gold ring he had saved for months to afford. "Annabelle Jenkins, I have loved you from the first moment I saw you, even when I thought you were completely beyond my reach. You are the bravest, kindest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Annabelle's answer was immediate and joyful. "Yes. Yes, Harrison, 1,000 times yes." They were married in a small ceremony at Catherine's house in January of 1883, with Margaret Reed and the Jenkins family in attendance. Even Jack Miller made the trip from Socorro to serve as Harrison's best man. Annabelle wore a simple cream-colored dress that Catherine had sewn, and she carried wildflowers that Harrison had ridden an hour to find. She had never looked more beautiful. As they exchanged vows, Harrison thought about how different his life might have been if he had not returned home that day, if he had not found his mother injured, if he had chosen to stay silent about Richard Davenport's true nature. Every choice he had made, every risk he had taken, had led him to this moment. Standing before the woman he loved, promising to cherish and protect her for all his days, Harrison knew he would make every one of those choices again. Their life together unfolded with the kind of quiet contentment that neither of them had believed possible during those desperate days of flight. Harrison continued working at the ranch, eventually being promoted to foreman. Annabelle opened a small school in their home, teaching reading and arithmetic to the children of families who could not afford traditional education. They saved money, made plans, dreamed together about the future. In the spring of 1884, Annabelle gave birth to their first child, a healthy baby boy they named Henry James Reid. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair, and both parents were instantly, hopelessly devoted to him. Margaret traveled from Socorro to help with the baby, her injuries from Richard's attack now just a memory. She doted on her grandson with unrestrained joy. 2 years later, a daughter joined their family. They named her Catherine Rose, after the aunt, who had provided sanctuary when they needed it most, and the roses in her garden where Harrison and Annabelle had first truly talked. Catherine was a lively, curious child who kept them constantly entertained. The years passed in a rhythm of work and family, of small victories and ordinary challenges. They heard occasional news about Richard Davenport. He served his full sentence and was released in 1887, after which he left New Mexico entirely. Rumor had it he moved to California and married a wealthy widow, though nobody knew for certain. Harrison and Annabelle did not care. That chapter of their lives was closed, its lessons learned, its scars healed. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on their porch watching Henry and Catherine play in the yard while baby Thomas, their youngest, napped inside, Annabelle took Harrison's hand. You ever regret it? She asked. The choices we made, the life we built. Harrison looked at his wife, at the silver beginning to thread through her honey-colored hair, at the laugh lines around her eyes earned through years of genuine happiness. He looked at his children, healthy and loved, growing up in a home where violence and fear had no place. He thought about the ranch he helped manage, the respect he had earned, the community they had built around themselves. Not for a single second, he said honestly. You are everything I ever wanted, Annabelle. This life with you is more than I ever dared to hope for. Annabelle smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. That day you came to my house and told me what Richard had done to your mother. I thought my world was ending. I thought I had no choices, no way out. But you showed me I was wrong. You gave me my life back. We gave each other our lives, Harrison corrected gently. I loved you from a distance for years, never believing I could have you. And you needed someone to see you as more than just a bargaining chip in your father's business deals. We saved each other. I suppose we did. Annabelle lifted her head to kiss him, sweet and familiar after a decade of marriage. And I would choose you again, Harrison Reed. Every single time. As the sun set over Santa Fe, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Harrison held his wife close and watched their children play. He thought about the wedding that had never happened, the bride who had chosen freedom over obligation, the cowboy who had found the courage to say the wedding must stop. That single act of interference, born from love and righteousness, had changed everything. Sometimes, Harrison reflected, the bravest thing you could do was refuse to accept the future everyone else had planned. Sometimes courage looked like running away. Sometimes love meant disrupting everyone's expectations to protect someone who could not protect themselves. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, those acts of defiance led not to ruin but to redemption, not to loss but to love that exceeded every dream. In the distance, church bells rang out the hour, their clear tones carrying across the evening air. Henry called for his parents to watch him do a cartwheel. Catherine demanded her father come push her on the swing. Thomas began to cry from inside the house, ready to be fed. It was ordinary, domestic, beautiful chaos, and it was everything. Harrison stood, pulling Annabelle to her feet beside him. Together they walked toward their children, toward the life they had built from courage and conviction, toward the future they had chosen for themselves. Behind them, the sun slipped below the horizon, ending one day and promising another. And in that promise lived everything worth fighting for.